大家好，我叫何非凡. Hi everyone, my name is Anthony, and today we're going to be talking about my favorite thing, Chinese grammar. Woohoo! Specifically direct and indirect objects. So, this structure is actually a lot like English. Thankfully, it's pretty easy for us to understand this because the patterns are not that different. In English, we say subject, verb, direct object, and indirect object. And that's pretty standard, and when we have the direct object before the indirect object, usually they're related by a preposition. So in Tom put the book on the shelf, the book is the direct object, and the shelf is the indirect object, and they're related by a preposition. It might be helpful to review some of these terms. So the direct object, simply put, is what's acted on by the verb. In gave the book to Sarah, or whatever that sentence was, the book is the direct object because it's being given, and Sarah is the indirect object because she is receiving the direct object. And usually it's easy to remember because the indirect object is a person or a place or something capable of, receiving something. So what did I mean when I said that the structures are very similar? Well, if you look at the B sentences, it's exactly the same. Subject, verb, indirect object, direct object, right? Wang Peng 发了李友一本书. Wang Peng is the subject, Li You is the recipient, 送了 is a verb meaning give, and 一本书 is the direct object. And that is exactly the same as John sent Mary a letter. That's super familiar, should be really intuitive to us lucky native English speakers. Things get a little different, but not very different, in prepositional phrases. So when you have a prepositional phrase, right, like all the English examples that have to Mary or on the shelf, it's the same thing in Chinese, but the prepositional phrase is in a different position in the sentence, right? And we're used to that too. All prepositional phrases in Chinese are in a different place in the sentence than they are in English, right? In Chinese, we say subject, prepositional phrase, verb, and in English, we say subject, verb, prepositional phrase. That's pretty standard. I don't think that ever changes. So the thing to remember is this sentence, the structure of this sentence is actually exactly the same. Wang Peng 给李友, Wang Peng to Li You, 发了 sent 一封信, a letter. So let's try some practice. 张老师教我中文. Zhang Laoshi teaches me Chinese. So Zhang Laoshi is going to be the subject in the sentence. Let's see if this works. Woo! 教我, 教 is the verb. 我 is the indirect object, right? Because, well, yeah, you guys get it, right? 我 is the indirect object because it's a person. It's a thing that's capable of being taught. And 中文 is the subject it's the subject that's being taught, not the subject of the sentence. So 中文 is the direct object, 我 is the indirect object. Let's check and see if we're right. Hey! So let's try a slightly harder one now. 服务员给我一杯水. The waiter gave me a cup of water. 服务员 is the subject, right? Because it comes at the beginning of the sentence. 给我一杯水. Now this is maybe a little tricky because 给 is a preposition, like we saw in the other slide. 给李友发了一封信. Remember when he sent a letter to Li You, we said 给李友发了一封信. But in this case, 给 is the main verb, meaning to give. So, 服务员给我一杯水. So what's being given here? It's a cup of water. 一杯水. And who is it being given to? 我. So let's check that. And we're right again. All right, a couple more. So, Wang Peng 问常老师一个问题. Wang Peng is the subject. We come at the same place at the start of the sentence. He is the agent. 问 is the verb, right? You ask a question. A question, 问题, is the direct object that's being asked to 常老师. He's asking the question to the teacher, or really asking the teacher the question. Hey! All right. So this one involves that other use of of gay as a preposition rather than a main verb. So this says 售货员, the salesperson, 卖给我. 卖 is the fourth tone 卖 means sell. So this is sell to me. 卖给我一件衬衫. 一件 is the measure word for shirts, or really, I think any item of clothing is going to be 一件 or 一条. 一条 is for pants and long things. But the measure word for shirts is 一件. 衬衫 is the shirt. That's what's being sold to you. So that's the direct object. The subject is the salesperson. The verb is 卖. 卖. And gay is specifying the recipient or the direction, which is 我. There we go. So, what's the point of all this? The point is, it's going to be easier for you guys to understand these things when they're spoken or when you're reading them. That shouldn't be too hard because it's very similar to English. What's going to be harder is understanding the nuances of which verbs should take prepositional phrases or where to put them when you're trying to produce a sentence, when you're trying to speak Chinese. That's what's harder. So I want you guys to actively listen to the sort of structures that go with each verb, right? We saw the difference between fa, to send, and song, to give. There are certain structures that sound better with those verbs, and those nuances are something you're going to be able to understand better if you actively listen or actively pay attention when you read or hear sentences that involve direct objects and indirect objects. So this is something that comes with practice, like all the Chinese language skills. But the point is, you also don't want to get confused. This is super similar to English. Remember that prepositional phrases behave the same way wherever they are, whether it contains an indirect object or not. And remember that gay can be a main verb or a preposition. So I hope I didn't confuse you. I hope this clarified things up a little bit, and I hope you guys will be able to pay more attention, closer attention to some of these fine details. Thanks for paying attention. 再见.